Welcome to this Equinox transmission. Wow, we are standing at such a potent threshold moment. This is maybe one of the biggest seasonal shifts we've been in, maybe ever in our lifetimes. Definitely in recent equinoxes, solstice time. This one is huge. There is so much I could say about it. There is so many things I have written in my notes. I've just notes galore here. And I don't want to overwhelm us. I don't want to just fire hose. So I know some things are gonna play out over the next 6 months, over the next year, over the next 7 years, over the next 20 years. So we'll see where we go in this time together. But this is a time of real consequence, a time that is asking something, a lot of something from us. And if we really think about it, the next 6 months, they might actually be the most important of our lives, and really being conscientious and clear and rooted in how we move, how we engage, what we give our time to, what we think about, what we're feeling, how we're feeling, what we're choosing. It all matters. And we've already traveled through so much this year, but it's been that phase of the presence, the try it before you buy it, check this out, clean this up, what's going on from book to Equinox. We've been through eclipse season, retrogrades, so many world events. I'm sure you've had personal upheavals, personal ahas, epiphanies, all of the things, personal shifts. Life may have been feeling like it's moving really fast for you. It may have been feeling like it's moving really slow. And those are your experiences that can be happening in this place of the liminal before things take form. Presence is first, consciousness is first. Then there is engagement. There is this sort of dancing with the energies. And then we move into path. We move into particle and path. And that's where we're coming to now. We're coming out of some of the liminal. Not in the macro, we're gonna still be in quite a bit of liminal shifting, but in more of the micro processing, the seasonal journey that we're on is moving much more into, like, now it's time to action. Now it's time to engage. Before we do that, giving yourself some time this weekend, the next few days, to pause and reflect. What was coming up for you? What has been coming up for you? What has been stirred, stone? What are you dreaming about? What things keep pinging? And what is that revealing to you about the quality, the attunements, the energies that you're in resonance with? How your inner architecture is operating? What do you really need to meet very clearly in this moment of rebirth? In this moment of crossing the threshold. As I was channeling and sitting in the transmission phase, which has been happening actually for quite a while towards this equinox portal, and I said, I've got so many notes. I will not make you go through all of them. We'll be discerning about what really comes forward here. But as I was sitting in this transmission of the equinox, the inquiry was, do you allow a full ending? And then what I was shown from that place was seeing the threshold and seeing how many of us straddle the threshold, where we want to keep one foot in the old, one foot in the known, one foot anchored into the ways that we've located and the things that we cling to and the paths that we know, and then one foot moving to the other side of the threshold towards the unknown, towards the new, towards where the current is moving us, towards where the initiation is inviting, but that we're straddling the threshold and this place that where we don't fully end and allow ourselves to begin again, recognizing that pattern as evidence of the fracture of the inner architecture, of the fractures within our psyche, that we have not, as people, as modern people, learned to live in the coherence of that inner architecture that would allow us to not have our safety placed in the external, to not be finding ourselves in our own stories, in history, in memory, but allowing ourselves to be located in experience, in the flow of self. So you might envision yourself, just as we began here, with one foot on one side of a threshold and one foot on the other, and just feeling yourself in that straddle and just feeling the tension of that place of, I want to move on and I want to do what I'm here for and I want to step forward into what I'm called. I want to remember who I am and to allow that remembrance to be an activating, amplifying aspect of my experience. And it's hard. I don't know how. I think that would be one of the ways we might say it. We say that a lot when we're in these places of understanding. I don't know how to uproot from the past. I don't know how to be in the flow of myself and just really honoring that place where the straddle might be happening for you. And in this place of not fixing that, but acknowledging that if you can listen to this transmission, to anything else that you're doing over the next few days as we enter into this season where we're at this threshold. If you could listen from the place of there is nothing to fix and everything that needs to remain will move through this threshold with me. That if I fully let go, if I fully give myself over to crossing to the other side, aspects of myself, the memories I do need to hold, the ways of locating, all of that will cross with me. Just giving yourself the permission to move through the threshold. If we think about another analogy for that might be if you're attempting to install a new operating system and you don't close down the thousands of tabs that are open and you don't reboot the computer, that new software doesn't take root and it can't run. So even though you may have downloaded it, it's sitting in stasis and it's not actively running the programs. As uncomfortable as that might be for some of us to recognize and realize about ourselves, that we may have been operating this way a lot. And that part of where we have allowed ourselves to play in our intuition is to download the thing, but we have not fully closed down all the tabs. We have not allowed the system to fully reboot in that way that the new operating system comes online. So that may be where you are most invited this equinox to actually go through the full letting go, letting what has been rest, letting what has completed lie, letting yourself go through the full death phase. If you haven't been allowing that or in the ceremony of that over the last 6 weeks, for many of us, more like over the last 6 months, for some of us, the last, 7 years. But if you haven't been in that ceremony of the death, of the release, of the letting go, then it might be really beautiful to give yourself that space over the next 3 days to ritualize some type of completion and to really acknowledge what will not move forward and how you will allow yourself. What's so beautiful about the reboot, the rebirth, is that we don't have to worry. We could just not be in the opinion of ourselves about like, well, I hope I get to keep that part of me, or I hope this comes, or I hope I don't change. The rebirth is not to become something new. The rebirth is to return to that place of original self, that place of the origin point. So you will be you. You will be more you. And maybe some habits are lost. Maybe stories that you've held about yourself, maybe beliefs have shifted. All of those ways that the programming gets played out. But the rebirth is you returning, remembering, coming back. At Equinox, we're in the energy of balance, the equal part day and part night. From our more reductionist, mechanistic, controlling, fixing, self-development, spirituality, whatever lens you come through, when we're thinking about balance, that level of consciousness, we think about it as being symmetrical, fixed. These two scales that have equal things on them and they're like perfectly balanced. While the scales may be a great image for balance, they don't really hold true in terms of a dynamic balance of living. That's not a good image for thinking about balanced self. We might really understand that balance is dynamic. From a movement perspective, balance is not found in rigidity. If I am standing on my flat feet, it's more stability than balance, because balance would be the interplay between that centered place and a dynamic edge. Balance is where you've moved into space, you've moved into expansion, you've moved into risk, and you've found the ability to anchor and reach at the same time. Balance is not a static holding. It's not collapse. It's also not the overreach. It's not you launching yourself out of your comfort zone, feeling the fear and doing it anyway from, again, those places where we're doing more harm and more disruption to ourselves in a way that does not serve than really understanding the ability to hold right tone. Balance is really about the tone, the dynamic harmony between a center and an edge, between a stability and a mobility, between a descent and an emergence. That's what balance is about. If we think about bringing this idea of balance towards an invitation, an initiation in our life, we would want to look at where is the staticness, where is the collapse, where is the inertia and the involution. So that is one place to look. Where then is the overreach, the over-articulation? We've been talking a lot about over-articulation, about that overreach, about the overdoing. Where are those things? And looking at the place of where is there not a balancing? Where is there not the two things? One of the aspects of coming into the expansion of our inner architecture in a way that we can hold coherence and bring in new frequencies and really be holding life force as voltage that fuels us and brings us into well-being and health and harmony, are understanding that these places where the separation and the fracturing are operating through us are keeping us in a flip-flop, or keeping us in not having that connective tissue of self operating fully, holding us dynamically. So what would tend to happen, even in the way that a lot of people talk about nervous system, talk about healing, talk about all these things, it's either or. I am this, I am that. I am working, or now I'm integrating. I am sympathetic, now I'm parasympathetic. And the way that Western medicine tends to look at the body as these separate parts. Even when we start to work at a systems level, we still think about systems as being separate from each other and missing the holistic webbing of the interplay, the interconnectedness. I remember one of my first dance injuries was a hurt knee. So you get injured and you go to the orthopedic surgeon and they have all this stuff that they want to do. At the same time, I was studying with a somatic teacher who was just very masterful and beautiful. And she was supporting me through this. And I had talked to her about what the doctor had said and what he wanted to do to rehab my injury. And she said, okay, that's interesting. And she said, well, what if we actually looked at where that injury originated? What? Where the injury originated? I'm hurt. My knee is hurt. It's hurting there. And she said, yep, that's where you're hurting. But it didn't start in the knee. It started above or below. It started from a place of origin. And in doing that, we began to work on pelvic repatterning. And so it was so beautiful for me to learn that very early on. And it's not that I didn't do specific PT on the knee and working with that injury, but I worked it in relationship to where the imbalance was originating from that required the knee to now be a compensation, and it required it to be misaligned and required it to work in a way that was going to always end in injury. And if I apply this to where we are in our lives, so many of us have been trying to do our healing, whether that's physical healing of autoimmune, chronic issues, all of these types of things, mental health, regulation, relationally, like whatever you've been working on. There's a huge chance that you've been working away from where was the origin point of this issue. I think one of the reasons we do this is because a lot of the origin points are systemic, they're collective, they're communal, they're familial, they're ancestral. And that can feel a lot wilier and a lot harder to navigate. And when we've been so unsupported, when we learned as children no one was going to listen, no one was going to attune to us, we weren't going to be supported in these ways, it was really up to us to figure out the answer. Trying to find the balance inside of the symptom, inside of the messed up place, inside of the current expression of dissonance, dysregulation, disharmony, feels like we're doing something. So we read more books and we try more things and we keep throwing different drugs or different aspects out of it, but we're treating the part and not the whole. Even when we think about doing our parts work here, and I work a lot with somatic parts work, and I find archetypal and somatic parts work to be hugely important in the journey, but not from a place of forgetting that the part resides with the whole. balance originates at the origin point. So that place of originating, that place of authority is going to determine what is going to need to counter, to contort, to hold, all of those types of things. When you can connect back to that origin point, balance becomes a really different conversation of bringing polarities, of bringing oppositions, of bringing just even two things into relationship and into right tone. Ways that I might invite you to look at the balance of yourself would be to look at, from that place of collapse or from that place of overarticulation or overreach, what's the first thing that needs to be implemented? So if you're in a huge collapse, if you're in that involution and the suppression and the apathy, and you're just sort of drowning inside of yourself, what becomes something that anchors an opening, something that invites the light in, something that invites the breeze in, like something that opens the door? What might that be? And think about that through the energy, through an emotion, through a thought, through an action, through your breath, through a movement. Like work with that in every metaphor, every symbol, every bit of your psychology and your engagement with life that you can. Like work that piece. And then the opposite. So if you're in overarticulation, overgiving, overextension, what becomes the anchor that allows something to be centered, for something to be held, for something to find support, for there to be a relation towards center, towards slow, towards receiving, getting to bring what might at first feel like opposition, countering energy in to begin to restore balance. Now, that is the beginning of the work. That is absolutely the very beginning point, but that's a great place to start. Another thing you might think of is to look at yourself elementally. We are right now very much in water and fire energy. And so you could just start with that. How much water is in my system? Is it the right amount? Am I drowning in myself? Am I flooding in myself? If I brought in so much water that it's just a muddy marsh in there, and what energy then would I need to bring in? What elemental alchemy would I need to bring in to bring some breeze, get some waves going, whatever it might be? Is my fire too high or too low? Am I in right tone with my water and fire together? Is there a good amount of steam? Is the water the right temperature? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Do I need more or less fire? So you can play with those. Then you translate that. Well, what would that mean in my terms of creation? What would that mean in terms of this relationship? What would that mean in terms of this choice? Not just keeping it in isolation. We want to be making sure that we're always bridging our practices back into tangible, real life application. You might look at your astrology chart, notice what the element kind of balance is for you. Are you more air, more water, more fire, more earth? Are there missing elements that could be really fun to work with as that countering, balancing energy to how you're designed, meaning that you would apply an elemental aspect as a structure, as a container for the flow of you? That's a great way to work. Also, just acknowledging your makeup, right? Expecting that you're 25% earth, 25% air, 25% fire, 25% water. You might be 90% one element, and, sort of looking, go like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense in terms of my rhythm, in terms of the way I process, in terms of these other aspects of myself that I need to be in balance with, and I need to allow to be in balance. So balance, really, what we're looking at here is not about staticness, not about some like false equalness, not about control, not about perfectionism, not even about consistency as the way that we, again, use consistency, what we actually mean control, but right relationship, right tone, right response. That's the balance that we're looking for. So you can play it with anything of that around this equinox, and really over the next 6 months, what would it be if you think about what it would be to be the fully balanced you? Not the falseness of being like, oh, I'm the peacemaker, but then that was actually is happening is I'm just suppressing myself, or I'm pretending not to notice things, or pretending not to see things, and acting in a certain way that is actually shrinking me. Like, that's not balanced. So if that is what being the peacemaker is requiring of you, that is not a balanced path for you to be on. So what would that mean over 6 months for you to then steady that opening and allow something to become more expansive, allow yourself to move in the way? If you have always required yourself to go it alone, to, figure everything out, to be the one who is, martyring yourself to get it done, what would a What would right relationship look like to yourself, to be honoring, to be collaborative, to be in different aspects of it? And so just looking at these places, not from that fixing. This isn't about overcorrection. This isn't about fixing. It is about restoration and recalibration. And this is huge for us right now. Because what is really required, like what all this is hinting at or pointing to, is this requirement over the next 6 months to have our inner architecture so just coherent, so anchored, so vibrant, so fluid in the way that energy and information and all of these things can move, but it's just so rooted in the right ways, rooted for expansion, stable for the mobility, because the collective is going to continue to fracture. The external, the experience outside of ourselves is going to continue to fragment and fracture. If you are not coherent in your inner architecture, it is going to be so jarring and so rocky. And I frankly am quite concerned about what is going to happen when the psyche cannot handle the inner fractures and the outer fractures, and the experience that people are going to be having and what we're going to be seeing playing out on the collective stage, because it's just impossible if there is not some coherence, if there is not an ability to locate inside of this inner architecture with everything that's going to be fragmenting the way that reality is going to continue to seemingly be splitting. It's just not how we want to do it. It's not how I would invite us to do it. I really, 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 like, I don't know how many times I can say really, but like, I really believe that this inner architecture work is essential. So a few things that I would say are themes that have emerged for me as I've been listening to how do we begin to do this inner architecture. I'm teaching this inside of Embody Your Intuition. That's one of the core points of the whole program, is to bring this inner architecture to allow our receptive and our transmission to be really moving through this inner architecture that is coherent, anchored, alive, very vibrant. But some other things that we could do that I could share with you right now around helping ourselves to create this inner architecture. One is to be very conscientious about your community. So get into conscious community, get into connection with people, be with the nervous systems that inspire you, be with the nervous systems that are participating in co-regulation at the quality and the level that is nourishing and rejuvenating for you. Be part of that. Be a contributor to a community in that way, and be a participant, be a receiver in community that way, gathering with your people, using our voice and our body. Oh, dancing and singing, huge, can be so great at bringing coherence through how we're using our voice, how we're using our body. So singing and dancing practice, more and more, more of that. Even better, do that in community. Get with other people, get with like-hearted people and sing and dance, chant, drum, play music, work with frequency in that way can help the restoration and allowing the form to really take shape and be held. Number 3 would be working with your fascia and opening up specifically through the spine, with allowing the fascia to become supple. If you've never studied your fascia, this is a great time. So dropping into somatic practice, working with practitioners who are understanding the quantum mechanics of fascia. So not just from a perfunctory kinetic place of the kinetic chain, or working with functional movement, which, while that is great, that is just the beginning of what the fascia is actually able to do. And what we want our fascia prepared for in this 6-month transition is to be able to be hydrated so that the fluids of our body, as we would have more light, more energy, more life force flowing, can be in the fluidity, the motion, the movement, and ease, in beauty. And then the 4th thing would be to really focus on your intuition and developing that as a tool, not just for prediction. While that can be super helpful, and like yes or no kind of questions are great beginning trainings for our intuition. What we're looking for here is that your signal is restored to that original place, so that you are clear in that self-architecture, that place of authority, so that you can receive and transmit the truth that you're here to do. You're not going to be rocked by the same world. You're going to be able to cut through the illusions. You're going to be able to know what is, I'm going to say right, but yeah, right, like right for you, for your family, for your way. Because again, as the fracturing, as the disassembling, as the dissolving happens, we don't want to get swept up in the collective chaos. We want to be able to walk groundedly inside of the dissolve, even if we need to walk slower because it's dark, even if we can't see, walking with assured steps, even though our heads may feel like they're in the clouds or they're blindfolded or whatever that might be, because I know how to feel my way through my own signal and hone in the directions that my body can source from intelligence that is higher than what the 3D will offer as its version of truth. This really matters. And it's very different than thinking about trying to operate from the survival intuition, which is how do I stay alive and how do I not experience the thing I don't want to experience? And a lot of people, that's where your intuition is calibrated. And that's not going to give you clear messages. That's not going to be revealing the truth that you're here to hold, that you're here to engage with, that you're here to build through. And that's going to have us, again, creating the past as the future. And I don't think many of us want that version of it. At this place of this equinox, we are in such an opportunity for new beginning. So this personal rebirth is towards a collective new beginning. When we step forward and we say, I will come from my original place, I will come from my own authority, and I will unfold this new path. I will move from being in this wave of potential, this pulsating self, this place where the authority and the origin is in that flow, and I will coalesce that energy into a path. And I will anchor that as a way. And I will guide myself on that way. And I will share what I find and what I know and what I see and what I understand. And I will use my sacred sight. I will apply my resonance towards life as an offering to the collective so that other people could use what I am discovering, the seeds that I have found, the breadcrumb that I have. And that might help them find their place of origin. That might help them find their path. It's huge. It's really huge. So one of the things we might think about at this place of rebirth is becoming a cycle starter. And many of us are practiced and we've been living a lot as the cycle breaker and the cycle ender. And maybe we haven't fully stepped into or claimed our power as the cycle starter. And so what are the cycles that you would be willing to start? How do you really anchor that vision you have for your life and the collective as a way that you're living, and that becomes a cycle that you're starting, and that you're bringing that into balance, into harmony, into actualization from center and from expansion over the next 6 months? What could you do? What cycle could you start? Another place we want to look in this equinox is at the shadow of constriction. And this is Gene Key 25 that we're in right now, the transit that we're in. And this energy of constriction, we were in the turbulence last week. And there is a relationship between the turbulence and the constrictions. Things get chaotic and they get crazy. We've got all this turbulence and the uproar. And then the way that we control that is to bring the constriction, to cement things down, to lock it down, to be in the force of it, to control of the thing, and then no more. A lot that we might even have been calling a healing journey has been this sort of interplay between the chaos, the turbulence, and the constriction and the control, and not actually the transmutation, not actually the full healing. So constriction, when we're holding it and when it's working on us, this density, this control, this like place of locking in and locking down, we will use discharge as a way of relieving ourselves of the experience of constriction. That will look a lot like resolve, resignation. So recognizing the constriction, feeling the force, feeling the pressure, feeling even, the encapsulation, the control, containment in not great ways that can be inside of this constricting energy. And we feel too small, or we feel too disempowered, we feel too little, we feel too, I don't know enough. Who am I? All of these things. And so we accept the lie, we accept the breaking of the cosmic law, we accept the false reality, and we acquiesce, we resign ourselves. And so there's this lowering of the constriction, lowering of the pressure, the experience of it by lowering our life force, surrendering to the lie, surrendering to the falseness. And then that means turbulence has to come back. Dissonance has to come back and rev us back up out of that resignation to get energy back in the body. And if we can recognize that when the constriction is there, when that impulse to control something or force something, whether it's coming from inside of ourselves or outside of us, when this sort of densification is happening, that it is the opportunity to stay with it, to allow ourselves to meet it, to accept that constriction is there, that control wants to do it. Bring this back to our likes and our dislikes. I don't like this feeling. And that can be a beautiful little wake up of, right, there's something that feels constricting here. There's something that feels like it is controlling. And if we have the ability to be and our signal to really use our sacred sight and our ability to follow the rhythm of our intuition, it allows us to transmute that shadow through the pathway of acceptance. And at this Gene Key 25, the city is universal love. Of course, the answer is love. Of course, when I transmute that density through acceptance, that it returns to its original state, that constricted energy of density, the force that we're putting on it, the struggle that we're in, the way that we want to control things, the way we're trying to be perfect, like whatever it is, the ways that we're creating balance outside of the origin point, attempting to, anyway, just creating more of that density. And when through acceptance, we come into reality, we come into being in the awareness of, oh, there is something for me to accept here. There's something for me to hold here. There's something for me to see and to know and to understand. And then we come to this place of love. We can remember that a definition of healing is the removal of all blocks to knowing myself as love. Constriction then might be all of the places we have forgotten that we are love, that we are brilliance, that we are light. And the path of accepting both what is at play right now and what is truer, what is the big truth. My tiny t truth is like, oh, this is what's happening right now. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what it feels like. This is all those things. And there's a larger truth. There is something bigger, wiser, wider, wilder. And I can bring those things into balance through my acceptance of both of them and allow them to reveal to me what truth is as I allow myself to accept I am worthy, I am love, I am allowed. So one of the biggest healings that is being ignited at this equinox place is this understanding that shame and the wound of unworthiness are never going to get balanced, right? You can't work on it enough to get it balanced. You can't balance your unworthiness. You can't balance the shame. These are places that have to come back to the origin point to recognize every place that would need shame is originating from a lie. And that when you come from the origination of truth, when you are authoring self through truth, and you're authoring your experience of truth, shame is not necessary. Shame is not a factor. Unworthiness holds zero resonance from that place. So how do we come back towards the origin point, come back to the choice point, come back in to this place of the original so that we can understand the healing is not about fixing. The healing is not about doing enough practices that we balance out unworthiness or getting good enough at our to-do list or whatever it is we might be doing to try and prove as a way of balancing the wound and recognizing that wound was created out of a lie. And there's something about that aspect of you coming through that acceptance, recognizing yourself as love, recognizing yourself as worthy, that brings the healing that we need to start seeing in the world. I don't know how that's going to play out in your life. I can't wait for you to tell me how that plays out in your life, like what you take as this sort of meta teaching into the micro of what this means for you to stop balancing outside of yourself, to stop balancing the consequence, to stop balancing the symptom, to stop balancing the end of the equation and come back towards this original self, this place of the signal of where the transmission happens of you and remembering your wholeness, remembering your sovereignty, remembering your power, and then allowing that to unfold into a path of reconnection. So opening it back up and what you create and you offer to the collective. I can't wait to see. The last thing I want to say in this transmission is, so bringing this transition into the mythopoetics. There were a couple of things that I was working with, and definitely there's Persephone energy here, and I'll probably talk about that more in the unfolding. But what I want to share in this specific transmission is about the restoration of the well maidens. That there's a place within you as a cycle starter that wants to be connected to this myth of the well maiden, in the sense that the well maidens were charged with tending the wellspring, the place of nourishment, the place of transmission, the place where wisdom flowed. And that what happened in the myth is that the king and his men began to abuse the well maidens. They began to transgress the laws of the well. They began to inflict violence and be very abusive to the well maidens. And so the well maidens retreated, and we now had a wasteland. As the well maidens retreated, this access to the wisdom was taken. This access to the flow of the nourishment of soul from source, the nourishment of the light, the nourishment of the remembrance, all of these things have been removed or limited. And in the wasteland, there are all of these wounds. There are all of these desolations. There's all of this ongoing abuse. We also see this in the myth of Persephone, where Demeter, her mother, is grieving and railing against what's happened to her daughter. And so she ceases to have the harvest, and she takes the fecundity and the beauty and the blossoming and the life-giving energy away. And so there are no crops, and there is a lot of desolation and a lot of wasteland. Applying this to our lives right now, we are living in the wasteland. We are living in the places where the leadership is not initiated through the divine feminine. So in the ancient myths, the king is initiated through the goddess, through the divine feminine. And that is how he has the rights of the land. That is how he has the access to the fecundity. And that is how he is established in leadership, is by his relationship to the feminine. What was required for leadership was a relationship to the feminine. We have lost this. And as those of us who are stepping forward, raising our hands, I will be a leader at this time. I will be a cycle starter. I will be an initiator. I will bring my light forward. I will shine in these dark times. It requires your relationship with the feminine to be restored, for you to become that well maiden who can access that flow, who can listen to wisdom and then allow that to unfold into structure, who lives in right relationship with the land. Bringing your inner masculine. This is not about gender. This is about understanding ourselves at this psycho-spiritual level. Everyone has an inner well maiden, and everyone has an inner masculine, and that inner masculine needs to be in relationship to the feminine, and the feminine needs to be in relationship to the masculine. And so if we were to bring this out of just talking about feminine and masculine, what it would be is that the part of us that engages, the part of us that creates, the part of us that puts things out into the world would start with wisdom, would start with listening, would come from nourishment, would come from right tone and right relationship. And then action would unfold from this place. As you think about restoring your own aspect to the inner well maiden, you might work with water. So you might have a water practice over the next 6 weeks or 6 months where you're listening to the water, where you're looking at the water. There's been amazing research. You can look it up about the crystalline structure of water based on the energies, based on the words, based on the focus, the way it's gazed at. And so you might work with water. You can also recognize and remember that your body is made up of a whole lot of water. And so the way that you gaze at yourself, the words that you speak to yourself, the words that you surround yourself with, all of those types of things are changing the crystalline structure of your own internal cellular matrix and your own experience of yourself. So working with water in that way. You might think about, how do I need to be nourished and how do I nourish the land? And you could take the land literally. So it could have land that you are stewarding or land that you want to work with. You could also think about land as community, the place where we reside, the place where we are working and locating ourselves. Going back to one of those core themes, how can we establish the inner coherence, understanding a requirement for our own inner architecture is to be in right relationship with other people, with the land. The third thing you might think about in this well maiden aspect is, what are you a vessel for? What are you here to carry forth? What is the wisdom? What is the medicine that you're here to be able to offer? If someone comes to your well, what do they drink? And are you doing the work to really be a clear vessel of that, to be in the anchored alignment to bring forward your medicine, your water for the world. So those are 3 really core places. So I wanted to make sure that we got in here. I know it's a lot happening in this, and I didn't even barely scratch my notes, but that's okay. This is just such a potent, powerful time. Whatever you take from this transmission, which I would love to know, you can share with me. So don't feel like I'm in a vacuum just talking to this screen, but I'm talking to real people. I'm talking to you. This is for you. If this hits you, if this has sparked you in any way, please know this is for you. Literally you. You are so welcome to share your thoughts, your ideas, what you also see, feel, know, and are experiencing inside of these energies. We need each other. We need to be building these communities. And one of the things I'm really interested in is community of people who identify as leaders, not because you're doing a thing of leadership, not because you have a quote unquote role, though you may, of official leadership. I'm going to go into a leadership series this spring and talk more about what is necessary for the type of leadership we're wanting to bring forward. I'm not interested in a place where there's hierarchy of leader and follower. I don't think it works. I think we can see that. And I think one of the very things that keeps a lot of you from recognizing that you're a leader is what was required of you to be a quote unquote follower, and that you would not enact that upon other people. And so therefore you won't step forward as a leader because you don't want to be suppressing people and you don't want to be dimming them down. You don't want to be taking their power. So let's not do that anymore. And so let's begin this path of recognizing leadership as first and foremost the part where you say, I lead me. I lead me. I am in the forefront of my life. I'm in the center of my life. And I am in balance between the forefront and the center, and understanding that this matters. My life matters. How I live it matters. What I'm doing, what I'm focusing on, all of this matters. So maybe there's something to commit to in your self leadership over the next 6 months as well. And what would allow you to be in more of that balanced inner architecture of yourself and allow you to show up more fully in these unstable times. And so one of the places you might practice that self-leadership or create that inner architecture is going to be embody your intuition. It's the first anchoring of this next 6 months of work to get this inner architecture working and to weave a communal architecture of leadership, of love, of truth in this world. As I cross this threshold, working with that image of making sure I'm not straddling, but moving all the way through the threshold at this equinox for this new birth into new beginning, this rebirthing of light, I am prepping for embody your intuition and listening to the final pieces around the content and what we'll be exactly focused on. It's there, but I also listen in really specifically as we come closer to anything that needs to get shifted or added to make sure we're in that right tone and we're really nailing it. And this is going to be a really powerful container. So talk about community of like-hearted people where you can really be nourished and continue this journey of restoring the well maiden of you and restoring your original signal. And in that, on this coming Thursday, the Thursday after Equinox, if you want to join me for an open house, and I'll be talking about the program, I'll be talking about the initiations that we're going through, talking about a little bit more about the curriculum. And we'll also be doing a practice that will be a preparing the field practice. So how do we start this aspect of beginning to return to our original state? So you are so welcome to join for that. And I hope that this next season will be full of blessings for you. I hope that this energy transmission sparks something within you that carries the threads of rebalance, recalibration, and that you are able to really open to that place of remembering yourself, restoring that flow of love, restoring that flow of worthiness, however it might show up for you. I'll close it there. So many blessings. Have an amazing equinox. Listen to the fire, listen to the water, see what it means for you. Let me know how this transmission sits with you, what was sparked, what you're thinking, what it brings up for you. I'd love to hear from you. All right, take care.